The giggles at the beginning of the meeting were because we have a better adjusted atomic-ish clock in the in the council chambers tonight. All right. Up first, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second. Motion by Councilmember Pershman, second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We don't have anybody with us here this evening for community comments, so we will move right on to presentations and reports. 5.1 is the Certified Levy Project, the HPC concept approval. Mr. Schmidt, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so we wanted to give the council an update tonight on some of the work that we've been doing here this spring, specifically with the HPC as it relates to the Certified Levy Project. So as you all are aware, this is a project that takes place right in the historic district of Carver, so something that we're very conscious of and want to be cognizant of during our design process. So we felt it was really important to present this to the HPC. We did that over a series of 3 meetings actually this spring. So the last time that we looked at the renderings was in March at the council meeting, March 4th. Since then, we presented to the HPC on March 12th, which was basically the same presentation that you saw in March. We received some feedback initially at that meeting. We took that then and kind of further refined the concept plan, showed them some new renderings based on the feedback they received. And then most recently, we just met with the HPC last week, kind of showing the final concept plan rendering for the corridor. That is included in your packet, and it's shown on the screen here. So I think most recently, the feedback that we received was regarding the color of the wall systems. The HPC really thought that the limestone look, similar to the historic bridge going into Riverside Park, those limestone blocks, making it a similar color to that was important for consistency in the community. The brick form liners themselves, so for the large flood wall system that kind of contains the flooding, they thought a bigger limestone blocky look was more appropriate, that kind of showing it as, a foundational piece of infrastructure. Then some of the accessory walls, just to kind of help develop the grade necessary to tie back in. They thought maybe a brick liner look, with the smaller bricks was appropriate, just to show that, to kind of break things up. And then lastly, we talked a lot about kind of accenting and breaking up the wall systems and really kind of using that as a benefit to show the history of Carver. So as you can see in the rendering, there's some opportunities for some of the bigger concrete panel areas to really show that history by way of doing imprints in the concrete itself. So that was the main feedback that we received, and which led us to develop the plan that you see today. This plan was approved by the HPC last week at their meeting. So at this point, we'd be looking at kind of using this as the basis moving forward as we move into design of the project. Ultimately, bringing it to council again as plans are developed for review and feedback, and then to the HPC one more time to kind of show them, okay, this is where we were at concept, this is where the final product is after design and plan approval from all the agencies that will be reviewing this project. So I think that's really the basis of what we wanted to cover tonight. I guess just from a general schedule perspective, we are working on final environmental clearance for the project, which should hopefully be happening this summer. So after we got the concept plan approval last week, we resubmitted our environmental documents to HUD, which is the federal lead agency on the project. That will then be routed back to other offices, specifically one of them being the State Historic Preservation Office. They'll be looking at this too. So that's in now, and we're looking for any final comments or approval to receive the environmental clearance, at which time we can move into final design formal offers on land acquisition and the like. So that'll be occurring here later this summer and fall as we move into those steps, and still on track to hopefully have a phase 1 project ready to bid here next year. So, any questions?
Any questions?
I wanted to make just a couple comments from the HPC from the meeting. One of these is that the pictures that are on here, this is just a concept, so those could change. This was just a placeholder. And then the HPC really did a nice job on envisioning and re-envisioning kind of what this could be, because it was pretty sterile and modern before. So I think that their vision on this was really nice, and they did a really nice job.
What is the lifespan of a concrete imprint? Is that something that needs maintenance, or in 15 years does it look like it's a dirty wall?
So it would actually be printed into the wall that's cast.
Okay.
So I could see that being a good life cycle. You might have to do some periodic, maybe some power washing or something if it starts to get
But there's no dyes or anything, it's just relief in the concrete, right?
The stuff that we looked at was relief in the concrete.
Okay.
Yep. So it should be pretty fail-safe.
Aaron, is there a SHPO component of this? Do they have to sign off on this?
Yep, so they're one of the reviewing parties to the overall environmental document. So HUD will route this concept over to SHPO.
And this is part of the environmental
Yes,
document.
it is, because
Okay.
it's part of the architectural and history component of the
Okay.
review.
Okay, I did not make that connection. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
My other comment is that on that pillar right in the very front that we're looking at, I would love to see either stamped or something about the 1965 flood and have there be a high water mark there.
Yeah.
People love to stand below that and say, "Oh, it was that high above me." So
Yeah.
I would really like to see a high water mark somewhere in this area where people can stand next to it.
I second
Perfect.
that. I've talked
Yeah.
to Aaron. I would love to see either an Easter egg of like, I wonder what that brown line is, you know,
yeah.
or
Good idea.
a straight out, this is where the 1965 flood was. You know, I think maybe all of us know that there's the marker on the telephone pole in front of the Public Services Building. Maybe we don't know. If you're standing on the front steps of the Getaway
Interesting.
Motor Cafe, looking at the Public Services Building, there is a telephone pole, and there's probably about chest high, there's a marker that says this is the 1965 flood.
Interesting.
But, so something like that.
Yeah.
But maybe something that's a little bit more well-known than that. We
A
are
little Easter egg.
I
3
like
out of
that
5,
idea,
we don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good photo op.
Yep, and that was actually a comment that somebody made at the HPC too, so that's a good one. We'll definitely find a spot to put that.
I guess just overall comment. I think the stamped picture is a great idea, especially as we get farther south in the wall. It keeps getting higher, right? When it was a lower wall, but when it's 8 feet high, that's a pretty. If it was just plain concrete, that's pretty imposing. But I do like the idea of the, and this is not a huge cost out, right? You're just a part of the concrete forming process. It's very typical in construction, right? It's not like we're doing
Yeah.
something crazy or.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's not a very uncommon thing.
Okay.
We'd have to, basically the mold would be custom, obviously, so
Yeah.
that's an additional cost, but then that could get built into the forming.
Sure. Well, and then just the rest of the concrete form. Is
Yeah,
very,
form
very
liner
common.
is very common
Okay.
construction practice.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, no, looks great.
Were you trying to get my attention?
Yep, Mayor and Council, just the comment that Councilmember Mock made about 1965 flood levels reminded me Aaron and Schmidt and I are working with Scott County. If some of you might remember, on the main trestle, we used to have a river gauge on one of the bridge piers. So we're working with Scott County to, as part of their design, have a new river gauge put on one of their bridge piers so that not only could we use it, but I think a lot of people enjoyed looking at like how high the river gets. So as good government goes, we're probably having another agreement with Scott County to get that river gauge installed, because there's some design work that goes into that. But Just wanted to share that piece of information.
I just had someone ask me about the height of the river this weekend and how
Yeah.
many feet we were at and where we were. So when we get that, then it'll be a much easier answer.
Take a picture.
Yep.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, no public hearings this evening. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember
I'll
Sayer.
second.
Second by Councilmember Welch. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right, moving on to business items. 8.1, the 2024 Utilities Project Bid Award. Mr. Schmidt.
All right, thank you again. So this is the award of bids for the 2024 utility improvements projects. So just as a reminder, there are two projects that are contained with this overall envelope of what we're calling the 24 utility improvements package. The first of which was the well and control project. So that dealt with well house 1 and 3, a complete rehab of that well house, and then up at tower 2 and well 4, that also included electrical control work in the tower there. So that's kind of package number 1, which is under action number 1 tonight. Action number 2 is the reconditioning of water tower number 2. So that's a complete recoating of the inside and outside of that tower. So those two things combined, they were presented as a bonded effort, which the finance director presented that to the council this spring. At the time, that was estimated at about $3,065,000. So that's just some perspective of how this all came together. We opened bids for these two projects last week. For the first project, for the electrical control work, there was one bid received again. So you may recall that we bid this project last fall in November, received one bid, and we bid that basically the same project again. We received one bid again, and it was from
Same
a
bidder?
different bidder. This time it was from Kilmer Electric Company, which is a pretty common, widely heard of contractor in this area. So they were actually a tad bit higher than last time even. So surprisingly, that's just how that one worked out. But conversely, for the tower rehab project, we had got really good bids. We received 7 bids on that, with the low bidder being Tanks Co. Incorporated out of Decatur, Texas. This is a company that does quite a bit of work up here in Minnesota. I know specifically just for Bolton and Mink, they're working on 3 or 4 projects this summer up in Minnesota. So they're a contractor that we're not concerned with performing the work. So in some preliminary discussions with them, it sounds like they might actually be able to get it done this fall, which would be great. But we'll see how things progress here during the summer months for them. From a financial perspective, as I mentioned before, the original bond concept was $3,065,000. The total budget recommendation post bid now is $2,810,000, so about $255,000 less than what we were originally programming with Lynn and her financial outlay projections for this bonded effort. So in all, we're looking pretty good. So we're under what we were projecting originally, and my recommendation is we move forward and proceed with these projects. So, any questions?
Questions?
Just a question about one bid again. So when we get just one bid, is there someone that you would have expected to bid that you might go back to and say, why was this unattractive for you?
Yeah. Well, so interestingly, Kilmer was one of those companies last time I called and said, what's going on? Like, because I would expect like a Kilmer or like an Egan Electric, someone like that, in their wheelhouse. And last time, Kilmer told me it was just a bad time for them. They had a lot of stuff that they were working on, and they just didn't feel comfortable bidding on it right now. But obviously, they put in a number this time, and I didn't end up contacting the prior bidder just because, for whatever reason, they could have chose not to. you know, they could have gotten cold feet because it was rejected last time, so.
So not crazy requirements, just lack of room on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's nothing I see with this project that's like goofy or out of the ordinary. It's really pretty straightforward work, so I really can't answer that question for you, to be honest.
Is it the lead time? Is there uncertainty in the market?
It could be that, because like specifically for the generator and some of the controller components, there's long lead times. So we have a completion date, it's next October. So October of 25 is what the electrical and control contract is. Knowing that there's long lead times, I did that because I didn't want them to feel anxious about having to complete the work and having an issue come up. So we set a completion date we thought was very attainable. So I just am not sure why they didn't, more people didn't go after it. So unfortunately, we got the one number, and it was about, I think it was 10 or 12% higher than last time. So that's the price of the project if we want to do it now. And with the state of that well house, I think we got to move forward and we got to get that done. So.
All right, any other questions or a motion?
Make a motion.
Oh, sorry. Just on the bond itself, right? So we haven't issued it yet, so then we're going to adjust it down to the actual number. Do we have a contingency built in, or is this the fixed final price?
Yep, so the 2.81, I have a full 10% construction
great.
contingency built
Okay.
into that. So I think we should be, hopefully, you know, money ahead at the end, but I think we should carry it since it's a bonded effort.
Okay.
Carry a pretty healthy contingency going into it, and you can always use that to pay off debt service early if you want, or whatever the finance director, you know, sees as the best use of those funds. So.
Okay, good, that was it.
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to award a contract to Kelmer Electric Company Incorporated in the amount of $1,468,654 for the 2024 Utility Improvements Project.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Perchman, second by Councilmember Welsh. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
All right, and the second part, I'll make a motion to award a contract to Tanks Co. Incorporated in the amount of $761,575 for the Water Tower Number 2 reconditioning project.
I'll second.
Oh, good.
Well, I'm gonna give that one to Lori.
Yeah.
Motion by Councilmember Perchman, second by Councilmember Sarah. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
8.2, the conservation sign policy. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. The conservation area policy is back in front of you tonight. I know we talked about it on May 6th during the work session. And just for those who may be listening, these conservation areas do exist throughout the city. There's been sort of more and more of them appearing over time as development has very consistently occurred in Carver. And what the conservation areas are these various areas throughout the city that are protected due to either environmental features like bluffs or wetlands, or stormwater features like ponds, infiltration basins, other stormwater BMPs. Many of these areas are city-owned, but some of them do exist on privately owned property. And city staff does receive a lot of questions and inquiries about what these areas are, what people can do in these areas. And so staff has thought that it would be a good idea for the council to approve a policy that really does a couple of things. One, it provides people, both staff, current staff, future staff, and I think also more importantly, residents with some background on these areas. It shows where they're located throughout the city, and it also provides some policy directives which are intended really to indicate what the council's expectations are for these areas. Again, this is consistent with what we've done over time in terms of practices and communications, but it's nice to have a a policy in place that everyone can refer back to and use as really a tool to communicate that information. And so a couple of tweaks have been made by staff since that work session. One really just is intended to clarify that city staff will maintain the city-owned conservation areas to the extent that, one, we're required to under any rules and regulations, and two, it's going to be dependent on city resources because, I think there might be some expectations out there that may not necessarily align with what the city has the capabilities of doing when it comes to maintenance. And we just wanted to clarify that. That's really going to depend on sort of a case-by-case situation. What depends on what's in the conservation areas, and it depends on, how much resources staff has at that point in time. And then the other modification that was made was just to Exhibit A to update that signage depiction to indicate the sticker option. That was the council's preference. We talked about how it would really be a good idea to sort of better hone in on specific features that are within conservation areas and specify what types of features are located behind any particular sign. And so you can see that on Exhibit A. We went with that second choice. And so the motion that's recommended tonight is to both approve the policy as discussed at the work session on May 6th with that one change that is reflected in the packet materials tonight, and then to direct staff to install the sticker selection that we talked about at that work session as well. So I'm happy to answer questions or talk about this to the extent the council may like to tonight.
Questions, comments?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
So just for, again, clarification, all of these things are existing and our ordinances are required by the state environmental or stormwater, right? So the policy is the city's implementation of those ordinances and how we intend to manage and execute or enforce those, I guess. Is that a good summary for a non-lawyer?
It is, yeah. And I think I mentioned this at the work session too, but we're really not creating new policy here,
Right,
but
okay.
rather we're memorializing existing practices and policies and trying to create that educational tool for everybody. So essentially your question, I would answer yes.
Okay.
This is nothing new, but rather the goal is to provide folks with information and kind of a one-stop shop for that information rather than to have to think, well, what's behind that conservation area? I better reach out to staff, and then they'll have to reach out to the engineers to determine, why that was put there and what can we do back there. If there's a sign that says, this is a bluff setback, we can refer quickly to the city's bluff regulations to tell someone, here's what you can do in that area, here's what you can't do. Or if it's a stormwater pond or infiltration basin, we can say, nope, that's city-owned, that's off limits, you can't trespass in that area. We are very limited in what we can do under MS4 regulations with that area, and so we'll maintain it. And thanks for reaching out, but please don't trespass on city property, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. That's all I have.
This, for the city attorney and for Council Member Welch's question, Dave, can you, just for emphasis and clarity, Council Member Welch asked about state statutes. One of the communication gaps here between staff and residents is some folks look at these as DNR conservation areas. Can you just drill down a little bit on that to clarify that they're not and how these are managed differently? Thank you.
Happy to, yeah. So Minnesota state law provides a chapter about conservation easements. And these are areas that are typically managed by the state or the DNR or third parties like watershed districts or other government entities, and they're highly protected. There's almost nothing that can happen in those conservation easements because they're meant to preserve the wildlife and other things. These are not conservation easements. These are not governed or regulated under that Chapter 84C. They're rather conservation areas that, for a long time they've been identified as that and called that in Carver. We probably could have used other names, not to say this isn't fine name and it works, but I think there's a lot of people that get confused and think that these are DNR managed conservation easement areas, which is not the case. They are, many of these areas are either city-owned or subject to city drainage and utility easements due to the stormwater features that are in there, but they're not conservation easements, and so they don't fall under that umbrella of kind of very highly protected areas where people shouldn't be, mowing and, removing vegetation and doing things that clearly will happen in these areas. The city's going to be doing different activities in these areas pretty consistently, actually. So hopefully that clarifies things.
Thank you.
Good. Nothing. I have nothing as well. I think these are one of the examples for anybody who's watching along at home. We talked a lot about this in our work session 2 weeks ago, and this is pretty much what we talked about. Here we have it. It's funny, if our last meeting was May 6th, on May 7th, I got an email from a resident saying, hey, I've got this in my backyard.
What does this
So
mean?
it is so helpful to have this, to be like, here we go. Here, this is what it is. Let me know if you have any questions. So.
Yeah.
With that, I will make a motion to approve the conservation area policy and to direct staff to order and install the decal stickers identified in the policy.
I'll second.
Motion by Mayor Johnson, second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Communications.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just have one item. I connected with Aaron and asked if he could give the most recent construction scheduling updates for Lions Park Courts, the 3rd Street Bridge, and the 2024 street maintenance project.
Okay, so Lions Park project, I actually just communicated with the contractor yesterday. We're looking at lining up a pre-construction meeting the first week in June, and their plan is right now to start on June 17th for that project. So that's Lions Park. The 3rd Street Bridge project, we have the grant agreement fully executed with the state of Minnesota, so that's all done. I'm actually going to be working on putting together a first reimbursement request for that project for engineering to date. So hopefully we should get some cash flow in the positive direction there. Working with SM Henches and Sons on that project. They've already provided the shop drawings for the box culvert, so we're reviewing that right now. So that's kind of critical path to get that approved. So the supplier can start fabricating the box culvert pieces. And then they're also working on building a schedule out after they get an estimated delivery date from the material supplier. We're also working with them on getting approving their vibration monitoring subcontractor and that kind of stuff. So a lot of kind of front end work happening on that right now. Hopefully in the next week or two, I suspect we'll have a better idea on schedule after we have the shop drawings approved, and then they can give us a definitive timeline for when they're going to get those materials. The 2024 street maintenance project, that one is slated to start on July 15th. So we had a pre-construction meeting a week or two ago with Valley Paving, and they're looking at starting July 15th and being done prior to Labor Day weekend. So about a month and a half for that one is what it's looking like. So
Any questions?
questions?
All right. Anything else, Brent? Okay. Who wants to go first for council updates?
I'll go.
Christy.
Oh. Yeah, Chrissy, go ahead.
We've already talked about what we went over at the HPC. The only other update I would have is that the Carver Lions Facebook page is down. So if you're looking for any of the events, you won't see them on there right now.
Facebook page or website?
Nope, the Facebook page. Yep. It's real hard to get a hold of Zuckerberg when.
What do you need?
So I've been struggling.
answer your call.
Yep, he's not answering my phone calls. That's all I have.
Well said. Okay. Reed.
So 3 things. The City Planning Commission for this month was canceled, so we'll have one next month. Aaron said they have some projects that'll be coming in, so that'll be good news there. I had a county park board meeting a week ago. We did our final bid award for the new playground at the Minnewaska Regional Park over in Chanhassen area. and then talked about the marijuana policy for the park. So that was kind of an interesting
Which way
meeting.
are they leaning on that?
No marijuana in the park. So, and then
Sorry, and that's countywide.
countywide, yes, countywide. And then today, I'm sure Courtney will talk about it as well. We went to the Chaska Middle School and had seventh graders ask us questions. So it was a fun time. There were some interesting questions. A lot of them think we are paid way more than we actually are. So that was kind of a fun thing. I think the seventh graders think city council members are underpaid. So, and then it was just kind of interesting when everyone introduced themselves, how everyone had a very similar story. Like, oh, someone who was already on the council got me involved in planning commissioner, got me involved in the parks board, and slowly got more involved. And so, yeah, it was a very fun time. So I had a good
All right, Lori,
I don't have any updates today.
Eric?
I'm going to defer to you on our Carver Crossing
Oh.
meeting. So outside of that, nothing.
All right. Bunch of updates from me. Saturday, May 11th was the Yard and Organic Waste event, which was really popular, and we did it a little bit different this time than we did a year ago, where there were dumpsters, so easier to take that off-site. It looked really popular when I went there towards the end of the, 2, 3, 4 hours that we were collecting. Those dumpsters were really full. So with folks asking, are you going to do this again? So really excited to see that take off. Thanks to the Lions, that same day they also had their shred event. It was funny. I normally can fill an entire grocery shopping bag, paper grocery shopping bag with stuff. And I was talking to the Lions. I was like, this is all I have. It was probably half full. And they're like, yeah, we're seeing that as a trend with more people going with virtual bills and that kind of thing. And they're like, we're not sure how many more years we're going to have to do this. So just thought that was interesting, but really nice to have that as an option. I'm getting rid of all of my shreddables. And then Eric and I went to Carver Crossing. I try to go there about once a year. Eric said, hey, I know you go there about once a year. Can I go with you the next time you go? So on Saturday, May 11th, we went there. I bet we talked to a group of 12 to 15 folks. Southwest Prime was a big theme of the conversation. The new CDA building was a big theme of the conversation. They appreciated updates on Miriam Junction Trail. I talked about the levee project. What am I missing?
Those are the highlights.
So really good group there. Everybody knows everybody, very engaged, and it's just cool to connect with those folks. May 13th, last Monday, was a Regional Council of Mayors meeting. We have an HPC meeting last Tuesday, the 14th. Really cool just to see how that's progressing. I've been going to more HPC meetings than I ever have because I'm really interested in how the levee project is making its way through that process. One of the newest members on the HPC, though, I think thinks I come every month, so he's always like, see you next month. I'm not sure you will. Last Thursday, we had the League of Minnesota Cities board meeting. Last meeting of the year. They don't have a formal meeting in June because that's when the League of Minnesota Cities conference is. But just kind of wrapping up the year's business. End of my first year on the board, so I can't believe it's been a year. Last Friday, there was a Minnesota Mayors Association meeting and kind of talking about how we're going to be doing our meetups for the next year. Carver Business Alliance, that group continues to grow. I'm trying to think of the takeaways from that. Hometown Bank is looking at more of an August opening now.
Is that behind or is that a schedule?
It's a little behind.
Are they sharing why, or do they know?
I think it's just
Contributed?
been
construction.
Seems like they've been waiting for windows a long time.
They're in now though.
Yeah,
they're in.
yeah.
Oh, they've been in as of last week, I think.
Yeah.
But I think they've always said summer, and then I think the closer we get, they've started dialing in. But it was July at one point, and now it's August. I just think it's the nature of construction in the world that we live in. So, lots of good conversation about growth and development and kind of how things come to Carver and what's pending and what we're looking at in that group. And then every Friday, Carver Ridge does a happy hour. I did a meet the mayor conversation with the folks there last Friday during happy hour, so that was great. Last Saturday was the bike rodeo. I always go there because it's fun, and I have some friends who have kids and get to meet them there. But if you have never been, it's probably worthwhile checking out. They have bike mechanics who will check up and tune your bikes as you're dusting them off for the spring and making sure that they're in good working order. Kids can get new bikes. Kids can get helmets. Folks from the Carver Parks were there. The Lions were there. There were donuts and treats. There was also, and I can't remember the name of the rescue, but there was somebody from an animal rescue there. And there were 2 kittens and a puppy and a chicken. So, like, it really was something for everybody. So it just...
Helicopter flying in?
Yes, Lifelink showed up. Lifelink landed, and that was really cool to see, too. There's obstacle courses for kids, like a little bit trickier for kids who are older and might have a dirt bike, and then something that's like just a circle to go around in circles for those balance bikes. So it really, really has something for everybody. Yesterday, Ryan Rydberg's family, if you remember from our last meeting, the AED donation, they had an ice cream social at Community Park to celebrate the installation of the new AED. I wasn't able to attend that, but still have to go over there and check out the AED. And then, as Reed had said, I spoke to 3 classes at Chaska Middle School West today. First hour was definitely a little bit harder trying to get questions out of kids when they might still be sleeping, but the fire alarm, the fire drill that we had in the middle of that hour just kept everything right up. But really kind of interesting to hear where the kids were at. There was at one point, and I shared before work session began, where kids were asking, like, where did you go to school? What are your backgrounds? And there wasn't anybody in that group that I was with that was like, oh, I have a poli-sci major, and I knew I was going to do this when I was in 7th grade. You know, we all kind of fallen into it through interest, through involvement, or whatever. So really interesting.
Did you tell them you were from Wisconsin?
I did ask how many Packers fans were in the room once. There was only one. That was the class that Mark Winchell was sitting next to me, and he almost escorted me out himself. So I think that's it for my list. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember Hirschman,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Walsh. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening.